Hi, Susan. You're muted.
Did you have a good July 4th, Luis?
Yeah, it was good. I had we were originally gonna do a road trip, but we ended up cutting it short because our electric car, we were not sure our electric car could make it to Yellowstone. So we didn't go.
Is there not enough like power charging things on the road?
Yes. So we drove all the way to Montana, but then we were there for like 3 hours in the only charging station in Helena, Montana, and only charged 10%. So we were like, maybe we shouldn't. We were concerned that we could get stranded in the middle of the park with no battery. So we just drove there and then came back.
I hope the scenery is good on the way.
Yeah, the drive was nice, but yeah, we didn't.
Yeah, that's
We didn't visit the
unfortunate.
park. Yep.
It is a consideration with electric cars. And also I always thought like if there's limited charging stations and like let's say for times like July 4th when everyone is on their way, would they run out of charging stations?
Potentially. One thing that we noticed is that the states with the least infrastructure, there were not as many electric cars. Like here in Washington, that you see a lot of electric cars, but then as you drive in Idaho and Montana, the number of electric cars you see is less and less. So we really didn't have a lot of trouble finding available chargers. But again, like the problem was that like there were cities that only had like 1 or 2, and they were slow charging stations. They were not fast charging. So we were 3 hours in a Taco Bell in the middle of nowhere, charging 10%. So
good story to tell.
yes. So we decided maybe later. I think one thing that I heard is that there's gonna be an adapter for Tesla that's gonna come soon. So that might make things easier, but as of now, it's for non-Tesla electric cars. It's still challenging.
Well, good to know. Thanks for the tip, Luis.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, cool.
I know Akash said Akash is gonna take off a couple days, so he was leaving early today. So I think he mentioned he was not gonna be able to make it.
Got it. Okay, we can start. Get started now. Let me share my screen. Sharing the meeting notes. Back things around a little bit. Cool. Can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Yeah, we can see it.
Thanks for confirming. Okay, let's get started with our PR. So we are thinking about releasing RC6 this week. So while we go through the PR, let's also make a call like if this should be merged or should we try to merge this before we release this week. So the first one up is Binbin, the Rego policy support. I know you've been actively working on this. Are you targeting to get this in for RC6?
So we are going to release at fifth week.
Yeah. So just to clarify, I think given that that we just need to take this fix to support the plugins, we should just shift. So RC6 I recommend that RC6 should only be a fix, should only have the fix for that, and then have RC7 be the new RC6. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes, that makes sense.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
basically we're gonna advance an additional RC just so that we can get the fix out for the plugin.
Yeah, sure.
Got it. So we're not going to add any features.
No, not for RC. Since we're shipping this week, that would be, I think that would be too aggressive. I think again, my recommendation here, and happy to listen to others, is let's just fix the plugin issue, ship it, and then move on to RC7.
Got it.
Are there any thoughts?
Yeah. Feynman, Xinghe. Oh, forgot to mention to Xinghe. Xinghe, are you aware of the RC5 issue where we only have the base image, not the plugin?
Sorry. Do you mean if I made any problem, or it is about the cosine problem?
Yeah, it's related to the cosine plugin issue that Saganya reported. But basically,
okay.
the action item here for the image that you will consume is going forward. We will currently Ratify has the publish workflow builds two images: the Ratify image and the Ratify CRD. For RC6 that we're going to release, we're going to have three images: the Ratify base image, the Ratify image with the plugins built, and the Ratify CRD. So for AKS user scenario, I believe you only want the base image. So the chart by default will point to the Ratify image with the plugin. So when you install it, you might need to override the default image repository in the Helm chart.
Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Another question is that so the base what will be the name for the base image? Will it be Ratify notation or Ratify base?
Yeah, it'll be Ratify base. So I'm just going to quickly go to the PR that we closed yesterday. So the publish package workflow specifies the name of the image. So basically you can see here, there's a variable repository base, and it points to GHCR repository dash base. And in the publish step, we've added a new step to push the base image. But once we have RC6 published, I can send you the exact package.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because once we run the workflow, we'll have the exact image name.
Yeah. Actually, I'm using the image will be published to MCR. And I think I may need to make some name change because I used to make it as a Ratify notation, not a Ratify base.
Oh, got it. But we never published anything with the name Ratify notation, right?
Yes, I know.
There's a reference somewhere to like Ratify.
No problem. I will change it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Xinghe. Sorry for the inconvenience.
Oh, okay. Thank you for your information.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions related to the published workflow modification?
I think so, Susan, just for the folks that were not there, I think, can you just provide a context on what happened? Some more context.
Yeah, sure. So that we Ratify as an open source project. There are customers who wants to use Ratify with all the plugins that we have built. And there are also consumers like AKS who only wants a part of the Ratify, like the core Ratify with the built-in notary plugin. So what we did in RC5 is we made some new parameters to optionally build the plugins to like the cosign plugin and the SBOM plugin. They are now optionally built based on the flag that's passed into the build process. So we've updated all our tests and stuff. That is all passing. But in our publish workflow, we are not passing these parameters on line 50. Mm-hmm. So my fix to publish the image with the plugin is to make sure we pass build cosign true, build SBOM true, build license checker true. So that's a fix. But this issue also revealed like a test gap in Ratify. So I've created an issue where I initially created the issue to say, okay, we should have automated test for quick start, at least, that runs against our last released version of Ratify. But after this issue, I think we can use the issue that I created to kind of build a full suite of tests that runs against the released version of Ratify.
Yeah.
Because right now we always build locally, and as we can see, like the local build step can be different to the publish workflow, like the official released version. So there is like a bit of gap there.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks for the additional context. Yeah, I was just wondering why did we miss this, and specifically so
because all our tests passed.
Right.
It was all good.
Right. Do we have any documentation on how to generate a plugin where we also need to update this step to make sure that moving forward we set the right parameters to build all plugins? Or is there potentially like a way to, rather than specifying project like plugin by plugin, like a parameter where we can set build all?
Yeah, I think there would be.
Maybe something to add another issue about, just to track that, because this might be very easy to miss if somebody else builds a new plugin.
Yeah.
And so just to prevent from building only certain plugins in the official builds, let's have an issue to see how we can build all, or yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Bin, just to I think currently we have 4 different parameters, like cosign enabled and like license checker enabled, but we can also have an overall flag, plugin enabled, and where we can just append all the plugins to the build step.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And then just to follow. Okay, sorry, Feynman has his hand up.
Yeah, as we are proposing, use the RC6 as the patch release, something like a patch release to fix the Ratify plugin issue, right? So I would like to know, are we going to cut the release based on the current main branch, or we just cherry pick this fix from Susan as the only deliverable of the RC6? What will be included in RC6? This is my question. So I think if we are going to cut the release from the main branch, we will need to know what will be included in RC6. And for those issues which are marked as RC6, we will need to move them from RC6 to RC7.
Yeah. Just going through the PR list, I think the last big change is for the GoLint upgrade, where we had to do some refactoring. Binbin, do you know if this PR made RC5 or is it like post RC5?
No, that I know. So that one was that we needed for RC5 because we were not able to build. I know there is a big refactor. So, okay. Actually, I take that back. So let's see. So there's two of them. There's the build. Can you click on one of them, on that one?
I think this is after, this happened after RC5.
Right. Yeah. So we did, yeah. So this one, can I see the file? Yeah, the files seem to
Yeah,
indicate
70
this is-
files. It's the one where we did lots of like little changes.
Right. So yeah. So this one did go after RC5. I know that like so we weren't able to build because of GoLint, and Akash did a small fix for RC5 just to get the build on block, and then he mentioned he needed to do a follow-up. So this one should be the follow-up. My recommendation is taking the RC5 branch, cherry picking your fix, Susan, and build.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
And then like Feynman mentioned, moving everything from RC6 to RC7.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yep. I will update the meeting. I have the RC6 on the discussion agenda, but I'll update the notes. So what we're gonna do is gonna take the RC5 branch and then only apply the update to the publish workflow and then release RC6. So I will try to do this today, just to leave some buffer. Does that sound okay? So it may be released today.
Yeah, that's okay. It will be a patch release.
Cool. And then after the release, I can let Saganya know and also give the location of the base image to Synchro.
Makes sense. Thank you, Susan.
No problem. Okay, back to this PR. Had it open. It was the OPA engine upgrade. Any update on this, Binbin? Do you want to provide?
Actually, saying no, like feature update on this PR. So I'm just waiting for reviews or approvals.
Sure. So I've provided some comment.
Oh, nice.
Akash, is he oof for the rest of the week, Luis?
Yes, Akash will be out until Monday. Is he
Okay.
Is he blocking this one?
Binbin, do you want to wait for Akash's feedback, or do you want to? We can work on this together this week and try to get this merged.
I think it's better to wait for Akash's comments. Yeah, since he already had a round review on the PR.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's okay for him to wait for him for next week.
So the next one on the list is redesign doc structure to improve navigation. So I know Akash have signed off on this PR already, but we need Joshua to sign the CELA notice. So maybe I'll ping him on the Slack channel just to get this merged, hopefully this week before it's out of date.
Okay.
Because
yeah.
I think it may have some conflict with your PR, Binbin. So depending on which one goes in first, there may be some updates.
Okay.
You can also ping him on Teams.
Yeah,
Joshua-
yeah.
Joshua
I'll
is-
try to, if he doesn't respond on Slack, I'll try Teams. Like if it's things happening in the open repository, like I think it's good to show some
Okay,
activity on our Slack channel.
makes sense, makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
Cool. The next PR is using the latest SBOM tool. Bin, do you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, so for this PR, actually, can you go to the files we changed? Yeah, so this is a very minor change, and I made this change before because we used to just have a fixed version which was like 1.1.2. So the reason is that there was a breaking change, or not a breaking change. There was a bug in release following 1.1.2, might be .3 or .4. I don't remember. So in a previous PR, I update from the latest to 1.1.2, and now the latest version of the latest release is working for now. So I'm thinking if we should switch it back to the latest instead of a specific version. And I actually left a comment. So because we used to have some like issues with the like latest upstream
Yes.
tools, and so my point is that because this is a security tool, so should we always keep it up to date, or should we just like stay with a specific version to avoid like new breaking change or some bugs?
I mean, I kind of agree with Akash's comment where using latest is evil, in that we always have that risk to break. How often does this tool get updated? Do we know, or do you have any data?
For this tool, I guess it's a monthly release.
Sorry, say that again.
Do you mean for the SBOM tool?
Yeah, how like is the SBOM tool something that gets updated frequently, or is this something?
I feel they update it almost every month.
Oh, every month. Okay. Do we keep an eye? And here's another question. So if the thing about pinning to the latest is how quickly can we actually find the breaking change here? Is this something that we would find like in the Friday, like in the weekly releases, in the dev releases, like?
Yeah, it will break the dev, not release. It will just break our CI,
Right.
the PR CI action.
And how quickly did we figure out this was broken when you changed to latest? Right away?
It just took me about 1 or 2 minutes.
Okay.
Because the log was very obvious.
Yeah.
I think I actually prefer referring to the latest version. So there is the point that Bin brought up that it's like a security tool. And also I think this version right now, we're looking in the makefile. This version is for the CI test, right? But in our source code, we actually use Dependabot to update the versions, and that is automatic. So there could be this situation, just like notation, where Dependabot has updated the notary library version, but the CI is still pointing to the old version. So there's this discrepancy. So Bin, like if in the source code, Dependabot is updating the SBOM tool for us. So the plugin is actually using the latest version of SBOM tool. The CI should also be pointing to the latest.
Yes, it makes sense.
Why is Dependabot not finding any issues in our CIs?
Oh, so actually that's not an issue with the code. So because we are downloading the executable from this like release, But actually for that release, they just forgot to upload that executable. So that's why we failed to download the SPAM to Linux x64. So that's the reason. And it's just like our missing external plugins in our image.
We all
I
make the
see.
same mistakes.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, the dependent board always check the updates, the version updates from the library repository, as we are just using a CLI tool, SPAN CLI. So I think dependent boards will not detect those kind of changes.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, let's then go ahead with latest.
And for this case, I agree with Akash. Maybe we can, as we are using SPAN tool for E3 test only, we didn't use SPAN for other cases or use this feature in Ratify's functionalities. So I would suggest we specify a fixed version, such as a stable version, like v1.1.6 or a stable version. I don't have a specific version that we want to use, but as we don't use other features from SPAN tool, so I think specify a version is a good practice, and I think we don't need to follow its latest version, as we might introduce any breaking changes.
I think that the concern here is a version that comes out every month stable. Bin.
Yeah, that's a good question. I checked their release. It happened almost like every 2 weeks.
Right. Is there any way to get the version from source that we're using at source so that they match? You know, I guess it's a different package, right, with the CIs.
But I also have questions. So if we, for example, if we set it to 1.1.2 and probably after maybe like half a year, they upgrade to like, for example, to like 3.0.0. Do we need to update our versions or we just keep it with the 1.1.2?
I think we can have a regular cadence to check which is we can always use its major version. I mean, something like 1.0 or 2.0. This is the most stable version, as we don't need any new features from SPAN tool. We just use it as our CI end-to-end test. I think have a major release in our CI test is enough. We don't need to follow its latest.
Oh,
Yeah, the issue here is Feynman, like in our SBOM verifier, if in our CI pipeline, we're installing a different version to the one with our SBOM plugin, the SBOM generated from the CI pipeline may not be verifiable by our verifier plugin, which is based on the later version of SBOM, because that one is getting updated by Dependabot automatically.
Ah, I see. So
yep.
We have a verifier plugin designed for SBOM tool.
I believe that's the verification. Bin, is that correct? Like that's why we're installing the SBOM tool here.
yes. So for this one, it's more like a generator SBOM, and for our code, we do the verification.
Yeah, so in the source code, if dependabot is keep updating the version as new releases come out, which is exactly what happened in the notary path. Like we recently also found our notary CI version is really old, which is pointing to like RC3. And in the source code, when we build the notary verifier, it's already been updated to like RC5 or 6. So there's this difference there. So it's actually better to have the CI pipeline.
I agree.
up to
I agree. Like in CI code, we should just use latest because that's what dependabot is typically going to point to. And yeah, since this is CI, it's not source code. I think it's okay.
Yeah, and as we might run into stability issues, but then it's part of the CI. We'll take a look. It'll just be the daily routine.
Right. Does that make sense, Feynman?
I think the general purpose is to align the version that we used in our CI. For example, we are using a CLI in our CI end-to-end test, and we also use the SBON tool library in our verifier, our verification plugin. So we need to align those two versions that we used in CI and also the verification plugin.
Yeah.
Or verifier.
Right. Yeah, the challenge here is on source, we have dependabot do that for us, whereas on CI, we don't have that. So, I mean, the other, I don't know if there's a way for us to automatically make a task to update the source every time we get a dependabot fix. Sorry, update the CIs. Every time
could you check what version are we downloading with the latest download versus what version dependabot is updating us to?
Yeah, I can do that check.
But I feel like since it's CIs, if there's not an easy way to sort of understand from dependabot, then I feel like in this case it's okay to use latest. But
thank you all. Let's see if there's any other PRs. There's one by Jun Chen. I believe he's actively working on this one. It's pretty new. It was created yesterday, and as a part of this, we're removing all the test cases that we have for the old OCI 1.1 artifact resource. Just to let everybody know, because going forward, we'll be supporting the format OCI image. So we feel like doing this notation upgrade from RC3 and to RC7, we no longer need the verifications that we support the old artifact type. But question here, Bin, is it the plan, like in the future, should we remove the support as well? But I think the mid-term plan is that we're just going to have this support in there, just in case.
But if we are using the latest notation, Go and notations, I don't think we will support that.
Okay, but do we have any special case in our source code to handle the old artifacts?
I remember we had, so we will do some check on the artifact tab. And probably we also need to make some code change to our workflow.
But this PR is for the CIs, like, so we're removing our test coverage for the old artifact.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Any feedback, questions related to PRs in general, anyone? Before we move on to the discussion items.
I add a new topic to the agenda items. It's related to the dynamic pluggable design for certificate store. I think I dropped the last meeting very early, so I think maybe I missed something. Maybe I missed some discussion related to this topic. Yeah, can you scroll down? I added topic. I just want to double confirm, will the dynamic pluggable design for certificate store be planned before Ratify v1.0? I think we had an issue to check.
Let me refresh this. Yeah, so I think Binbin and I had a discussion about the timeline and the work involved in supporting like the overall moving the plugin model to from standard in, standard out, and running a process to gRPC calls. Like, yes, we would want to have the certificate store, but realistically, timeline-wise, we might need to switch the existing verifier and store into the gRPC model first before we can introduce the certificate store plugin, is the short answer. So I think timeline-wise, we won't be able to get to certificate store for V1.
So I think the answer is yes, and we need a technical refactoring to use gRPC inside of Ratify's architecture.
Yep. So we need to work on the verifier and store plugin first. So then we thought about, like, if we worked on the certificate store first and then later do the refactoring for verifier and store, that'll be like a breaking change once we've GA'd.
Yeah.
So it's better to work on the refactoring for verifier and store first and slowly deprecating the current plugin model, and then build new certificate store as a plugin.
Yeah, totally makes sense. So as this is a breaking change, we hope this can happen before V1 and provide an extensible plugin design for Ratify. In this way, if any new plugins come in after V1, we should be able to support and integrate easily without any breaking changes. And we don't need to consider a V2 in that case. I think it worth us investing time and technical efforts to update its design, maybe with gRPC or anything else. And we may have 1 more month to prepare for V1, as there's a reason that I can share in our Teams channel. This is related to our Azure products. I will not provide any details in today's community meeting, but I can share, as we will have 1 additional month to prepare for V1.
Yeah, so related to the gRPC, so I'm currently doing prototyping just to see what are all the pieces that we need. Like, we have to figure out the plugin model, the authentication model, and also, like, in the agenda today, I've added the old issue that we used to track the gRPC item, and Kara have also left comments from their previous investigation. So actually, that is the next agenda, so let me bring it up. So there was talks about moving to gRPC like almost a year ago from now, and Kara have left some notes from their previous investigation. So from my current prototyping, like, even a 1 month, like, obviously depending on how many dev resources we have, like even 1 month for one dev is pretty tight. But once I have like a prototype, then I feel like we have a better understanding of how much work is involved. But as you can see, so this is the issue 191, is the issue that tracks the move from like how to improve the service to service communication. So like the notes, number one is like, make sure it's worth it because it's not a small change. And then she left notes about like, maybe we need to think about how do we discover the plugins, how do we pass in the configuration. So it's a good read. We can, I think in follow-up sessions, the dev team like me, Binbin and Akash, we can talk around these points. But going forward, we can use issue 191 to track this work. And we'll use this thread as a discussion. And I also want to bring up, like, they have checked in the proto files, kind of like the interfaces for the plugins under the experimental folder. So it's more of a question, Binbin, like a lot of things have changed, and also our vision is a little different to what Kara's team had. Like they had some idea about the orchestration layer and things like that, and we don't have any plans to support them. So should we just leave this as is, as V1, but like, you know, V1, we actually never put this into use. Should we delete this folder? Should we, like, what do you think we should do with the existing proto files in the experimental folder?
But since it's experimental folder, should we just ignore it? Because we are developing the production level for now, so maybe we can just have a new folder for the prototype.
I see.
Is this a typical like prototyping pattern in open source? Like basically having a specific
Experimental
folder for new features or new capabilities. How does
I can quick a look. I don't know, Feynman, have you seen this pattern before?
Like, does Notary do something similar? Like, what does Notary do with their experimental files?
Notary, yeah, in Notary, we don't have a specific experimental folder to land those experimental features in whatever the notation Go libraries or notation CLI. We use experimental feature flag,
right,
and the environment variables to let users enable those environmental features. I'm also curious, how will end users find these experimental API, and how can they enable it, or this is the APIs by default and it is visible for every user? I always see the strategy of introducing experimental feature in a different branch or in a playground repository. This is another type of introducing experimental feature. But in API level, I would suggest that we can take a look at the Kubernetes strategy, and it has a lot of experimental alpha, beta features in each release.
Got it. I think for cosine, we have just seen like it's the same binary, but you want to use any experimental folder features, then you just put the flag. And their documentation, the discoverability aspect, like they would document experimental features, so it's easily searchable, but in their sample command, they'll just say, you know, this is an experimental feature, make sure you provide this flag.
Yeah, cosine has a similar strategy with notation for managing experimental features. and APIs.
Yeah,
But
Bin, do
Ratify
you
is
know if
more
Notary
like
Codebase has the external? Do they put their code in a separate location?
No, I don't think so.
Got it.
Actually, I don't think we should have an experimental folder. Because at that time we don't have a like feature flag, but now we already have a feature flag. So I think everything should be behind the feature flag instead of putting into a experimental folder.
Got it. Yeah. Another question, Bin, like looking at their proto definitions, like Verify plugin should map to our verifier interface, right? Where in our interface, we have like create and can verify and verify. I don't know why in this version of verifier proto, like they don't need the name and create method, but they only have a verify reference. Maybe that's why Kara left a comment about like, how does the discoverability work? But are we happy to continue to have those like run for the executor to run through all the plugins and ask them, oh, I have this artifact type here, plugin A, B, C, D, E, like, can you verify? Like we're not changing the interaction model. We're just kind of changing the communication mechanism.
Yeah, I don't know why we didn't put those APIs into the plugin.
Yeah. I think like we won't be able to reuse this because they had a slightly different vision. But yeah, I agree. Like we will just have our own definitions and move it out of the, like our definition won't live in the experimental flag, the folder. But it'll initially live behind a feature flag. And our feature flag is not called experimental, right? We just have like different feature flags for each new feature.
Yes.
Cool. So Bin, I'll have some follow-up discussions related to gRPC. Like I'm actually having some issues like with the marshalling and unmarshalling, but since you have some experience, I might sync up with you later.
Okay.
Thanks. Next item is remove system error from the constraint template. Bin, you want to talk about this?
Yeah, so I had a conversation with Akash yesterday, and so we found that for the gatekeeper, there is a failure policy which was set to ignore as default value. So which means it will fail open any like timeout or unreachable errors external data provider. But the from the webhook, sorry. But Ratify is an external data provider. So if the Ratify pod is down, and so there will be a system error like returned to the gatekeeper. But in this case, because we already have a default template, which will check the system error, and we will fail this validation. And so that's not a fail open policy. It's like fail close policy. So I wonder if we should just remove this system error rule from our default template so that we can keep with the fail open policy behavior.
Is there a way to, so the failure policy is configurable by the customer, right? Is there a way to, based on the failure policy that's configured in Gatekeeper, conditionally include this violation?
For which, do you mean which violation? I don't.
Oh, just the system error. Like if we have an if statement, like if it's fail open, then obviously we don't want to be the blocking thing on deployment. But if it was actually fail closed, then maybe if Ratify is unreachable, what the customer said, if we want to fail closed, right?
But if this is a legal query, I don't know if we can get this policy value in this legal language.
I see. Got it. I agree. It's better to fail to be consistent with the default. It's ideal if we could fail based on the policy. That any comment? Toddy's dropped out. Feynman, Louise.
Sorry, I didn't follow up on this discussion.
Yeah, so the basic idea is that if a Ratify pod is done, so for the gatekeeper, if a validating webhook is done or unreachable, so gatekeeper will just pass this request instead of deny it. But for the Ratify, if a Ratify pod is done, the current behavior is that we will fail or deny this request. And so this is different from the default behavior of gatekeeper. So we are thinking if we should just remove this rule from our default constraint template so that we can keep the behavior consistent.
So just to see if I understand, Binbin, if the Ratify pod is down,
Yeah.
we will
fail that deployment.
I see. So
Actually, Xinhe, do you have any ideas on this? I guess you have some like experience on the deny or allow policy.
I mean, the most secure option is we fail, right?
Yeah, that's much more secure, but I don't know why gatekeeper will adopt the fail open policy by default.
Because we're kind of experimental for the customer.
What about because gatekeeper in fact has two effect option. One is dry run for audit and another is for deline. Is that possible? For example, if it is deline, we make we bypass it by ignore. But if it is audit, we still report the error.
But I have a question. So is it controllable by the constraint template, or is something else?
Frankly speaking, I'm not very sure about it. What I know is that there are some properties only existed when it is deline effect. For example, the user agent or something like that. But just as you said, in fact, in gatekeeper samples, I've never seen such application.
Can we ask Sertouch for guidance here? Or at least to understand why gatekeepers' behavior is allow open?
Yeah, I can have the follow up. Actually, Akash had a conversation with the guy before, so that's this is the proposed workaround for us for now, and I guess there would be some work on the gatekeeper they need to do in the future, but not in a short time.
I see. So then, I mean, if we already then I think then we should just be consistent with gatekeeper.
Okay.
It would be good to really document this one too, so that customers are aware.
Yeah, yes, that makes sense.
Cool. I think this is the last item on the agenda. We still have 5 minutes. Anything else to discuss, anyone? Cool.
Oh, actually,
we'll-
I have one more item. So since
Sure.
Junchen is contributing to our like report, so I'm thinking if I should set his role in the Ratify report, because currently he has no permission to run the workflow or run the CI pipeline. Every time we should to trigger that.
Oh, really? Wasn't it a rule just for first-time contributor? Like once he's have a PR that's checked in, he should be fine in the future.
I don't know about that. Maybe we can try it once he merge the PR and see he has no
Yeah.
permission.
Yeah. Let's do that.
Cool.
Cool. All right. Thanks for joining, everyone. Take care. I'll see you next week.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, everyone.